All right, Jennifer Salinas here. This is my beautiful audience. I'm going to be talking about the transverse abdominis, and hopefully they'll learn something today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I will be demonstrating an exercise to kind of help engage that transverse abdominis. Also, you guys hold out your handout. Just to kind of show that I printed out something so that you can actually get a visual of that muscle that I'm talking about, okay? And I'm going to pass it off over here. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so the transverse abdominis, that is the deepest layer of muscle that we carry in that core, okay? The core, when I say core, I don't mean just your abs, I mean the entire belt is what I call it, the core belt, okay? And that transverse abdominis, the muscle fibers run horizontally, so they run from your lower 6 ribs down into the iliac bone. The iliac bone, a lot of people call it the hip bone, okay? And it situates just inside, okay? And it's responsible for trunk flexion, for, like the side bending, okay, lateral flexion. Also responsible for rotations, okay? There are multiple origins of that muscle. The most important one is that it interdigitates with the diaphragm. Okay, the diaphragm muscle is the muscle primarily responsible for breathing. Okay, and the transverse abdominis kind of helps assist with that. It also kind of helps keep the organs protected as you're taking a big exhalation. Okay, so our muscles are the primary goal for muscles, not only just movement but also protection. They protect our organs. Okay. So it's posteriorly, okay, so our backside, we have what's called a thoracolumbar fascia. I think I'm saying that right. Thoracolumbar fascia, okay, it's this fibrous membrane that we have. We have it all over, okay, we do have the myofascia all over, but this particular area is for the thorax, and that's where it originates from the back. So a lot of the times when people start to experience back pain, it could be that it's damaged or stretched or weak transverse abdominis, because it kind of does provide, because of where it's at, even though it's lateral, okay, to the side, it's got connections here to the anterior, and then it also has connections here to the posterior, okay? So
so it really connects the whole way.
Right, it's kind of like how I see it as, it's like this little web is the best description I can give it. You got a web and you've got an attachment here, you've got an attachment to the side, and then you have attachments going here. So, and when you really think about the movement, it makes sense that, yeah, that's how it would be. But another place that it attaches is in the inner side of the iliac bone, and it's about a third lateral part of that inguinal ligament, okay, so that's also part of where you can move the pelvic bone, okay, so that's a very important ligament, okay. I'm going to talk to you about the insertion. I'm just going to get this kind of stuff, so if I'm going too fast, you guys have questions, you can feel free to ask me. But have you ever noticed on your sternum that little tiny bone that kind of, you feel it, or you can kind of see it whenever you take a big inhale? That's called your xiphoid process, okay? And that's where that transverse abdominis inserts. So it inserts here, and then it goes in to the linea alba, and the linea alba is a tendon from the ribs, the lower ribs, down to your pelvis, okay? So for movements like the flexion, okay, the hip flexion, when you bend forward and then pull something up, all those muscles are engaged, okay? So always remember that. I'm going to go over the innervation. When I use that word innervation, that just means the nerves that are running through that muscle. And you need nerves in order to contract, and of course, for the feeling of sensation, right? So there's some big words coming up here. The iliohypogastric nerve and the inguinal nerve. And those two communicate and run into, I believe it's the T7 through T11, okay? of the spine. Okay, so the nerves kind of, when you think of the nerves in the spine, they just come down and they're kind of like this. And each nerve corresponds with that organ. Okay, so you've got your cardiac nerves and you have, and so forth. And so that particular muscle comes in T7 through T11, those two nerves, and that's what communicates with that muscle. Okay. The thing about the transverse abdominis that I found fascinating when I was researching it is that it's actually a muscle that anticipates movement. So it already knows. When you said to yourself, I'm about to do a sprint, before you go and engage in that sprint, that muscle is already prepared and in protective mode.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a very smart muscle. I thought that was really cool, and it says that those nerves activate that way as a form of protection.
That just made me laugh, that's all. Just because working out, like getting myself to go work
Yeah,
out.
yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about ways to improve your transverse abdominis, okay, to make sure that it's at its most optimal strength. And I think it's very important, and you will see that if you ever do your own research on the core, that transverse abdominis is very important that you keep it strong, because it will also help your back, okay? When people start having weak transverse abdominis, that's when they start getting the slumped look, they start getting the back pain, okay? So real quick, best exercise to keep that strengthened, we're gonna do plank, all right? A plank hold. You can modify it whatever way you want, but anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds, all right? You can do you can even do it modified here from the knee. If your transverse abdominis is really weak, some people, they start modified here from the knee until they can bear that weight, okay?
That's something you would do only once? Like
You
don't
can
need to
do-
like reps of it, or?
If you do short time, I would do like 3 sets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, minute is optimal.
Is there an option, like a...
There is. So another
Instead
way to engage that muscle, you want to go ahead and do some flutter kicks, right? I always put my hands underneath the glutes. These are the gluteus maximus. And here, flutter kick, same
Wonderful.
thing. I call this a supinated moving plank.
Wonderful, I don't mind that exercise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, that concludes my presentation on the transverse abdominis.
Awesome. I
Thank
learned
you.
a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for being my audience.
Thank you.